Mel, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to listen to one of these videos. I want to spend a little time talking about the metaverse, talking about a couple of stocks, talking about a couple of cryptocurrencies that are related to that, and also a little bit about Meta, a little bit about Apple. I'm going to first start with this chart right here for a company that was very, very much hyped up at the hype cycle of Metaverse back in 2021. There is a gentleman that goes by the name of Dan Ives that goes on CNBC all the time. He does go on quite often to hype up a lot of these different innovation stocks. And at the hype of the cycle here for the metaverse, towards the end of 2021, when liquidity was just kind of going crazy and everything that's speculative got pumped up to the moon, they also, the company Metaport, which sells cameras, sells a lot of 3D cameras, and also does a lot of digital twins that is allowing you to have a very, very much a virtual look at pretty much any space you want on a lot of different buildings, a lot of different churches, a lot of different attractions. And a lot of people use this as a speculative bet that the metaverse is going to get hyped up very much very to great highs. A lot of it also has to do with COVID, and a lot of things has to do with remote working, things like that. Now things have started to shift away from that narrative. I think it's kind of probably swing all the way to the opposite way. And right now, Metaverse is getting no traction at all whatsoever. If there's anything associated with Metaverse, usually it's thought to be more of a negative than it's a positive. I'll talk a little bit about what it means for, like stocks like Meta and Apple and things like that. So, but this is gentleman Dan Ives back in November 2021 and was hyping Metaport as his favorite metaverse play for his firm, a big firm called Wedbush. And in November 2021, when price was already in the 20s, because of this hype cycle and because of this raised price target of Metaport to $38, price pumped in November. Guess what? That seemed to be the end of the hype cycle, because since then price has just been plummeting for over the next 2 or 3 years. And it's been a very, very brutal parabolic trend going downwards, and it's starting to decelerate, but the price has gone up to already from around the height of $38. Actually, I guess it actually did hit this target. Now it's less than $2. It closed yesterday at $1.77, which is absolutely brutal. A lot of investors have gotten stuck with this. I don't know whether or not Wedbush has suffered any significant loss from this. Certainly Dan Ives hasn't really talked about the metaverse much since then. The interesting thing, though, is as price continued to be plummeting, just like that, if you look at the data from Fintel.io, which is a website that tells you institutional ownership, as price plummeted from $38 all the way down to less than $2, you're seeing a significant increase in accumulation of the stock by institutions. Price going down, big money buying it up. Maybe they know something that we don't. Maybe they just think that this hype cycle is overdone and there were too many shares that are being held by retail investors. And the only thing to kind of scare retail investors away, to have them give away their shares, is to have the price go down. Institutions can wait. Retail investors often cannot. The individual investors hate to see the price of their stock keep going down every week, every month. This is a monthly chart, and it's been catching no break at all. But institutional accumulation has continued to go up. Now, initially, there was less than 20% of institutional ownership. Now the institutional ownership is starting to get to the point where you're starting to get close to 40% institutional ownership. Now, when you said 40% institutional ownership is not a lot, well, you remember when Tesla was having its hype cycle, it just kept pumping, 2019, 2020. There was probably only about 40% institutional ownership at that point. And you're really talking about now the big boys like BlackRock and Vanguard. You probably have about 300 million shares outstanding for the Metaport stock, and each of these companies own about like 8% of this. So now you're talking about up to about 40% of institutional ownership, especially in, I just showed you a chart, especially in the month of February, you have a huge increase in institutional buying. Because of this, it does make me wonder if big money knows something that we don't. If you look at just the volume of the stock, there really hasn't been much volume at all. There was a lot of hype here, there's huge volume here, huge selling volume over here, but the selling volume has pretty much been plummeting. If you look at it as a kind of a little bit like a trend kind of thing, you can see that the sell volume has just been kind of plummeting, and then through time you got these little spikes of buying volume. You got these little spikes of buying volume, and you got a little tiny spike of buying volume over here. But the volume really hasn't been that great. It looks like the stock has just been changing hands over here for a very long time. This is a log scale, so I don't want you to be fooled by that, but there is a huge decrease in price, but the decrease in price, even in the logarithmic scale, has been hugely decelerating. These lines right here, they come with the Ishimoku cloud analysis. Right now there is no cloud because there's not enough price action to compute a cloud to the right. But the Ichimoku cloud does give you two lines. It gives you this red Tenkan line right here, and also gives you a blue Kijun line right here. Usually, a parabolic or bad downtrend like this, a downtrend like this is starting to get to its end, where price is starting to touch and challenge the Tenkan line. It challenged it twice so far and failed to break above. Each time when it failed to break above, you get 3 consecutive months of pretty bad selling on low volume. It doesn't take a whole lot of volume to move this stock because it's a small cap. The market cap is only $550 million. It's a small cap. It doesn't take a whole lot of volume and a lot of buying to really move the stock prices. And right now, the narrative for Metaverse has just been plummeting. Like, nobody even wants anything to do with Metaverse. And sure enough, each time you try and push above, it goes down. If you look at a company's earnings, they are a company that is losing money. They are turning around, and they are potentially getting to the point that they might potentially be profitable, maybe late 2024 or maybe early 2025. That's one knock against them, is that they don't have any profitability. The second knock against them is that the predominant business they have is housing. But housing, as you know, they're not doing very well right now. I mean, house prices is still doing very good, but there's just not a lot of housing changing hands because people who are already living at the house they're living at, they don't want to give away the low rates that they've locked in with their mortgage. They don't want to buy a new house and have to pay for, like 6-7% annual interest rates, because the rates are still high right now. So there's not a whole lot of housing that's being exchanged hands. And Metaport suffers from that. Like the numbers, they're projecting a lot of growth. I think the growth number that they project are absolutely insane. I didn't think that was going to meet. They're projecting revenue growth up to like 50 or 60% up here, but it's just ridiculous, right? So sure enough, the revenue growth didn't turn out to be that. If anything, turned out to be maybe like 20% or something like that. So sure, stock plummeted more than 90% because of that. Now I still have people who show me that, hey, they guided like these crazy 50-60% revenue growth back in 2021. Why? I mean, is the stock price going to keep plummeting because they've been missing their revenue from like 3 years ago? Sure, it did that already. It already is slowing down, and price has already challenged the Tenkan twice. It's just so far been failing because the bullish, because the bearish narratives and the bearish momentum is still pretty significant, and it just simply hasn't had a chance to show any reverse. Matter of fact, objectively speaking, this is still a falling knife. there is a possibility that the price gets actually pushed underneath. Like just because I draw a curve right here doesn't mean that the price can get supported here. This is a money losing company. They're currently in housing to create digital twins, which is not a hot field right now. They are also, supposedly a metaverse play because they create, digital twins, which is also a no touchy right now for Wall Street. And then on top of that, there's also a problem where they have a lot of stock-based compensation that needs to really get better over time. They have gotten a little bit better compared to last year, but that's still a big problem. There's a lot of stock-based compensation that's been diluting the stockholders, even though institution has been gobbling up. But but it looks like it is trying a couple of times here, but it's still a falling knife. I have been buying this. A couple of reasons why is because I do like bottom feeding, and this is not a big position by any means. I only put a little bit of money at a time every week just to buy, because I do find that the sentiment has been on extreme negative side, and I actually see the number growth in terms of their subscriptions. And I see that the stock-based compensation is still a pretty big problem, but they're making little steps to try to mitigate that. I'm seeing a little bit stuff here and there, but this is one of those things that I'm not really purely based on technicals. I'm more bottom feeding. I'm more looking at their fundamentals, and I do have a little bit of belief of improvement, and I do think that sentiment is a little bit swinging to the opposite side a little bit too much. So the volume also very low, and I think that it doesn't take a whole lot of volume for it to really move the stock. So there are quite a few things that I am looking at that makes me feel comfortable with it for now. Even though it is a falling knife, I just want to make that very clear. The other metaverse play that has been very much destroyed, and it doesn't have nearly as bad of a chart as Metaport. Part of the reason why is because it's not that small cap anymore. The market capitalization for Unity software is 10 billion, whereas for Metaport it was like less than it was around $500 million. So this is like a company is 20x the size of Metaport. There's also a lot of institutional support here for Unity. There's a lot more institutional ownership for Unity than there is for Metaport. It's also one of the top 10 holdings for Cathie Wood's ARK fund. So there's a lot of price support here. As you can see, the price has kind of been in this accumulation range for about closer to 2 years now. And you can see the buying volume has been increasing. Selling volume really has just been kind of like meh, But buying volume has been quite increasing, especially during this part of the accumulation phase here. And if you look at the Tenkan line, it has challenged the Tenkan once, twice, and 3 times. So far failed to break above. But it's also establishing a little bit of a floor kind of look. It's got a pretty nice volume shelf down here. It's got pretty nice support, horizontal support level here. Is trying to find a base around here. And right now, this is also a falling knife because there's no confirmation of bull trend at all. The Kijun's all the way up here. Ideally, I have to see the Kijun cross underneath the Tenkan for me to even really say that, yeah, there's a pretty clear bull trend. Right now, there isn't. The other thing I would like to at least see is for price action to get on the monthly chart to get back above the Tenkan, back test it as support, and going up and allow the Tenkan to kind of push price up further. That also hasn't really happened yet. All we got is just close to 2 years of price action here. The surface significant range here is at the top part of the range, bottom part of the range, top, bottom, top, bottom. Right now we're at the bottom part of the range. So if you're a trader, this might be actually a good spot for you to enter, because if you want to play the range, which quite often is what a lot of people end up doing when they're trading. But I think that this seems to be a pretty significant range of accumulation here. If you look at the institutional buying, you can also tell that in the month of, just like Metaport, but not as extreme, just like Metaport, there's a pretty significant institutional increase in ownership in February. And over the trend, really over the last 3 or 4 years or so, there's been more and more institutional accumulation. Even the price has significantly dropped from this all-time high down here to where we are. The price keeps on kind of just going sideways, but institutional ownership just keeps on increasing based on data available from Fintel.io. You also can see that right now, Unity has close to 80% institutional ownership, and some of the big dogs are owning it too. Like even if you look at what Vanguard was doing, even in March, this data is freely available on Fintel.io. Even back in March 11th, they filed a 13F. You can see that they actually have increased their ownership in the month of March by Vanguard. But what did the month of March end up doing? The price was plummeting from like 30 to 25, 26. It just makes you wonder what could be happening behind the scene, together with the fact that the narratives have been so bad for Unity ever since Apple talked about the Vision Pro, which actually, by the way, is not doing very well right now. The hype cycle was here, but since then there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, including their CEO left, including a lot of charges they're trying to pass on to the developers, and a lot of developers actually saying they'd never work with Unity ever again. And there's been a lot of things that have been worked to trying to reverse the damage. There's a lot of FUD here, but what ends up happening is just end up ranging here, and what ends up happening is that institutional, we're buying. So I think there might be something kind of behind the scene. I think there's a discrepancy what the institutions are doing versus what the narratives are in terms of how bad it is for the metaverse right now. Unity is also losing money. This is by no means a how would you say, this by no means should be your high conviction play for you to just have a huge chunk of Unity if you're not able to handle the risk that goes along with it. But based on everything I'm seeing, it just seems like there's some discrepancies. There's some divergence here, if you will, between institutional ownership and the narrative. And to me, that could be a good sign. And also on top of that, it seems like it's ranging right now. It's a bottom of the range. I really would like to see it breaking back above the Tenkan and use as support to go up. We'll see what happens. I think global liquidity is still rising, and small cap still hasn't really run. So at some point, I think there's going to be a lot of change in narratives as risk appetite and speculation start to come back a little bit more. It doesn't really take a whole lot for you to pump stocks like Matterport and Unity to go up. There are a couple things here too I want to show you. In addition to looking at Matterport and Unity, you think about Metaverse, you think, oh, Meta's been doing very well. Well, the problem with Meta is, yes, it's got a full bull trend and everything. It's got a big, huge plummet down here. The huge plummet down here was really when Mark Zuckerberg was really hyping up the Metaverse and all that, and they have more employees than they need at that point. But they really started turning around and started to cut a lot of the fats, if you will, from the company, and really more focusing on profitability, top line, bottom line. And as the numbers continue to get better, Metaverse just happens to be something that they're spending money to be working on. That's not what their revenue or the EPS is based on. And because the numbers look so good, they just keep on going up as a result. But it's not because they are the powerhouse of the Metaverse, even though they are. They're working on the Oculus. It's got a very good price point. It's selling pretty decent. So they're actually doing pretty well from the growth standpoint with that. But it's not really the reason why they're going up, because the reason why they're making money is because they're starting to monetize a lot of their platforms. It has nothing to do with Metaverse at all. If anything, they're burning money through being in Metaverse. Another company that hasn't really been doing very well, and they've been trying to capitalize on the whole Metaverse part of it, is Apple. They announced their Apple Vision Pro around the early summer of 2023. Since then, the stock prices really just hasn't been doing anything. It could be due to a few things. First thing is because their iPhone numbers are just not doing very well. There's nothing really hype on Apple. The only update they have was Apple Vision Pro, which hasn't actually it just hasn't really been a hit. It costs too much. people don't really find a need for use of that. So far, it's just been, a little bit of, it's not really justifiable for it to have any increased revenue or anything like that from that. You also have China having being problematic in terms of their economics, and that caused companies with significant exposure to China, like Apple, to suffer. So actually, the stock market has been very unkind to the metaverse narrative. It's just not there. When is it going to happen? When are we going to turn around? When is metaverse going to be cool again? And when are people like Dan Ives going to start pumping stocks that have to do with metaverse play again? I don't know when that is, but there are some signs that institutions are starting to think about these kinds of things, even though the narrative still hasn't been on board yet. And that's okay. I like to bottom fish sometimes. That gets a little bit painful, but I also want to show you a couple of things too that really struck out to me. So first of all, if you think about metaverse, back in 2021, there was a hype cycle where there's a lot of cryptocurrencies that have to do with metaverse. One is Sandbox. This is actually one of those altcoins that just kind of went parabolic throughout 2020, 2021. And since then, it's just gone pretty badly over the last 2 or 3 years. But it's starting to show some signs of life. Unlike a stock like Metaport, unlike a stock like Unity, there's actually a lot of bullish development for the cryptocurrency world when it comes to metaverse. Sandbox has challenged the Tenkan and finally got back above the Tenkan. Tenkan is pointing up on the monthly. It back tested this month, looks like it's finding support. It's starting to develop a little bit of a bull trend here. I think there maybe because Bitcoin's going up and maybe money just end up flowing into altcoins anyway. Maybe that's the reason. But I'm not sure if I can necessarily say that that's the case, because this is still a metaverse play. And then a metaverse play that's also something that was hyped up very much so on the last bull cycle is Decentraland. Mana is going through the same thing. 2 or 3 years of pretty brutal downtrend, forming a little bit of Adam and Eve bottom right here, and it's flipping the Tenkan from resistance to support. So far, it looks like it's gonna try to break above this Adam and Eve bottom relatively soon, maybe over the next couple of months or so. Once it breaks above this bottom here, there's a potential for it to go up, to a lot higher prices. And this is, for the most part, this is really purely a metaverse play. There are other plays too, there's another coin called GALA. This is more had to do with, gaming. It does have, metaverse play with this one as well. But it also is forming a little bit of an Adam and Eve accumulation pattern, and it looks like it's trying to break out of it. Tenkan resistance here, turn support here. It looks like it's doing pretty well. I do think that there are some signs here with institutional buying on Metaport, institutional buying on Unity, and on a couple of these kind of altcoins that are more pure metaverse plays are starting to show signs that they might be turning around here a little bit. How fast are they going to turn around? I don't know. Again, I just want to reiterate that stocks like Metaport is a falling knife. I don't know when it's going to end. I'm just buying because I was looking at the company's financials. There's some discrepancies between what institutions are doing in terms of what the stock prices are, and the volume is just super low. I still think that the risk-reward ratio is pretty decent. But anyway, my cat is yelling. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let the cat out. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.